Hello, fellow resistors. Welcome to Political Reprobate, the show about how we survive and fight back in the age of white nationalist Christo-fascism. I'm Gemma, former Republican political operative, current political reprobate, and this is a daily podcast about how power really works in America and how we the people can take it back. This podcast exists for one reason: to help you understand what is actually happening in the country so you can resist it intelligently. Subscribe, like, and join the fight. Today, we're talking about the Trump cult of personality, otherwise known as the 30% of voters who will believe anything the orange shitwit concocts in his increasingly rotting, demented brain. We'll look at how it formed and why in the actual hell it's still dominating American politics nearly a decade after a reality TV narcissist rode down a ridiculous gold fucking escalator and announced he was going to save America from brown people and windmill cancer, apparently. We're also going to talk about how the cult affects elections and erodes democracy, why Congress behaves like a bunch of terrified orange cocksucking interns whenever Trump tweets, and why millions of people look at evidence directly in front of their faces and go, nah, fuck that, fake news. And because this podcast is not sponsored by anyone's grandma, there will be swearing, a lot of swearing. As I said, it's a Gen X thing. So buckle up. Here's the first thing people get wrong. Donald fucking Trump did not just appear out of nowhere like some orange political Voldemort. The Republican Party built the runway on which he landed over the span of about 50 goddamn years. And yes, I helped build some of that machinery. So allow me to apologize to the Republic. My bad. Starting in the 1970s, the GOP started building a coalition around four big forces. One, evangelical Christianity. And yeah, Christianity is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. Jesus would not recognize most of these people as his followers. Two, economic conservatism, aka let's make ridiculously rich people obscenely rich. Three, anti-government populism. These days, it's the cultists who consistently vote against their own interest, but who didn't used to vote at all. Four, a giant right-wing media ecosystem. Think state regime media bullshit. Rupert Murdoch's weaselly fuckstains. Individually, these groups had different goals. Evangelicals wanted cultural dominance. Economic conservatives wanted tax cuts and deregulation and large stacks of cash. Populists wanted someone to yell at elites, at the aforementioned brown people, and generally at globalization on their behalf. And the party leadership basically said, cool. Everybody piling in the same fucking clown car. For a while, that coalition sort of worked. But then the media environment changed. Talk radio exploded. Cable so-called news turned politics into professional wrestling. And then social media showed up and poured a shit ton of gasoline all over the dumpster fire. For years, the Republican base was being told the same story over and over. Liberals hate America. The media lies constantly. Democrats are socialists. Immigrants are invading and eating your pets. Christianity is under attack. You can't even fucking say Christmas anymore. When people marinate in that narrative long enough, they start looking for someone loud enough, angry enough, and shameless enough to fight the imaginary apocalypse. Enter Donald John fucking Trump, a man with the intelligence of a toddler, the emotional maturity of a middle school bully, and the subtlety of an air raid siren. Tangerine Palpatine didn't invent authoritarian politics, but holy fucking shit is he good at performing it. Authoritarian leaders usually share the same traits. They're loud, they're aggressive, they claim they alone can fix everything, they constantly create enemies. The orange shitwit checks every single fucking box. But he had something extra most politicians don't: television fame. For 14 years, the shit stain played a character on The Apprentice. The character of the decisive billionaire boss. The guy who points at people and says, "You're fired." Now, here's the hilarious part. That show was heavily edited to make him look competent. Behind the scenes, Trump was mostly a chaotic, ego-driven mess. And stupid. So stupid. I guess he at least wasn't shitting himself all the time like he does now. But television magic turned him into CEO daddy, and millions of Americans believed it. millions of the absolute worst Americans. So, when Trump ran for president, voters didn't see him as a politician. They saw him as a character they already knew. Tough boss who fires idiots. Irony, anyone? And compared to the usual scripted politicians speaking in cautious platitudes, Trump looked to potential voters like a guy who just wandered onto stage with a microphone and said whatever the fuck popped into his brain. Which, to be fair, is exactly what he did. And does. Still. Even with a fuckload of dementia. Somewhere during the 2016 campaign, something totally fucked up happened. Trump stopped being just a candidate to voters. He became an identity to cultists. You started seeing it everywhere. Red hats, Trump flags, Trump boat parades, merchandise that looked suspiciously like religious iconography. I once saw a dude leaving a rally wearing a shirt that said, "Jesus is my savior, Trump is my president." Motherfucker, those two guys would not agree on immigration policy. What was created is something historians and political scientists call a cult of personality. Yeah, I get it. That sounds dramatic. But look at the characteristics. In a personality cult, the leader is never wrong, even when confronted with reality. Criticism becomes betrayal. Truth becomes optional. Reality becomes whatever the leader says it is. Sound familiar? Yeah, because it should. We've seen this movie before. It never ends with a functioning democracy. It ends with people oppressed and dead for no other fucking reason than what color skin they were born with, what God they worship, or the sin of speaking their minds. Now, let's talk about what the Trump cult did to elections, because the effects are maybe not what you would expect. On one hand, Trump activated a huge number of fuckwit, low information voters who previously didn't give a shit about politics. Rural voters, white working class voters, people who felt ignored by the swamp, which they imagine as a bloated and wasteful government that spends their hard earned money on bullshit. These voters saw Trump as someone who is finally fighting the elites, the swamp dwellers, in both political parties. On the other hand, this is the part you might not expect. Trump also activated the hell out of the opposition. Suburban voters, young voters, women, minority communities. Nothing motivates turnout quite like the possibility of a national conniption fit, a cataclysmic stroke in the Oval Office. So, the result has been insanely high voter turnout, which is actually good for democracy, but bad for anyone whose positions are so unpopular that they can't hope to win a free and fair election. Trump-aligned candidates obviously dominate deep red districts. That's where the cult thrives. But, as you'd expect, they struggle in competitive areas. Yeah, go fig. They're unpopular with people they want to oppress, deport, or kill. Because while the cult is intense, it's not even close to a majority. It only represents about 30% of voters overall, which is why you see the orange asshole sycophants constantly trying to change election rules. When your ideas can't win votes, you start trying to steal elections. This is exactly what we saw on January 6th, 2021. And as horrible as that dumb fuckery was, what is being planned for the upcoming election is far, far worse. Now, let's talk about Congress. Or, as I like to think of it, the clown show formerly known as Congress. Because watching Republicans in Congress deal with Trump is like watching a family of abused kids try not to anger their drunk parent. Members of Congress know Trump is chaotic. They know he lies constantly. They know that all of the shit that escapes his rancid breath mouth hole is nonsense. But they're terrified of his base, his cultists. Because if Trump criticizes you publicly, you're probably getting primaried. And primaries are where political careers go to die. So Republican so-called lawmakers perform this fucked up political ballet where they privately complain about Trump and then publicly kiss his ass. That's why, if you look carefully, they have orange makeup in the corners of their mouths. It's like watching a bunch of grown adults pretend the emperor's clothes are amazing. "Oh, wow, sir, that invisible suit is incredible. The best ever. Sir, no one wears a suit like you do. Sir, like no one even thought possible." Meanwhile, the shitman is tweeting about windmills causing cancer. And while we're on the subject of Congress, we cannot let Democrats off the hook. So many elected Democrats in Washington are so beholden to interests other than the Constitution, it has made them impotent as an opposition party. There are exceptions, of course, and many more exceptions among Democrats outside of Washington. But the vast majority of Democratic members of Congress and senators don't understand or are unwilling to act on what needs to happen to resist fascism effectively, or they don't want to. Either way, going along and pretending that Congress is a functioning body is tantamount to collaboration, as it lends legitimacy to the fascist fuckwittery. And we will absolutely never forget their cowardice and not standing effectively against the regime. I promise more on this later. Now let's take a step back and move on to the psychological part. Why do millions of people refuse to believe evidence that contradicts dear leader? It comes down to something called motivated reasoning. Humans are not rational robots. We often process information through identity, and the less educated someone is, the more prone they are to do this. They have fewer information processing tools in their belts. When a belief becomes part of someone's identity, challenging that belief feels like a personal attack. For many orange cultists, their worldview includes a few key ideas. America is under attack. Liberals are enemies. The media lies. Dear leader is fighting for us. So, when evidence appears that contradicts those beliefs, it creates something called cognitive dissonance. That just means that a person has learned something new that contradicts a previous belief. Our brains generally handle this in one of two ways: either process the new information and change the belief, or dig in and deny the evidence. Guess how cultists handle new information? Their brains go, absolutely the fuck not. Instead of adjusting their beliefs, they adjust reality. The media is lying. The election was rigged. The courts are corrupt. The non-white immigrants really are eating the cats and dogs. And because right-wing media ecosystems repeat those explanations constantly, the alternate reality becomes self-reinforcing. It's like a conspiracy theory snow globe. Shake it hard enough, and the snow inside becomes somehow real. All right, enough pop psychology for now. Let's zoom out a bit, because the Red Hat cult is part of a bigger movement, one that blends white nationalism, Christian dominionism, and authoritarian politics. This ideology says America should be ruled by a specific group: white, Christian, conservative males. Democracy becomes acceptable only when that group wins. Fact check, fascist freaks. That isn't democracy. And if they lose, well, the system must be corrupt. The election must be stolen. The judges must be illegitimate. The press must be the enemy. That's classic authoritarian logic. Democracy becomes conditional. Rights become conditional. Truth becomes conditional. Power becomes the only thing that matters. And once a political movement starts thinking like that, congratulations, you are officially in the throes of fascism. Served straight, no chaser. Now the question everybody asks: how the fuck do you break a political cult? The honest answer? You usually don't break the hardcore believers. Some will see the light. Very few, though. The vast majority are going to continue drinking the Kool-Aid. See what I did there? If not, Google Jonestown and prepare to be horrified. People inside cults rarely leave, and it's because they'd built an entirely new personality based on dear fucking leader. But you can limit the cult's power. You do that through democratic institutions: elections, courts, journalism, civil society, and most importantly, participation. Authoritarian movements rely on people getting tired, getting cynical, giving up. Democracy survives when people refuse to do that, which means voting, organizing, calling bullshit when bullshit appears, and refusing to normalize the never-ending, mind-numbing authoritarian dumb fuckery. Look, I spent years helping run Republican campaigns. I understand political messaging. I understand voter psychology. But even I underestimated how powerful personality-driven politics would become in the age of social media. The orange fuckwit didn't just capture a party. He created an identity in an identity vacuum. And identities are stubborn things. But democracy has something stronger than personality cults. It has millions of people, millions of political reprobates, who refuse to surrender their voice to a loudmouth, narcissistic motherfucker who shits himself in a spray-painted gold whorehouse office on the daily. As long as we the people keep showing up, the story isn't over. Not even close. Stay loud, stay skeptical, and never believe a thing the orange shitwit or his sycophants say. I'm Gemma, former Republican political operative, current political reprobate. Join me. We're just getting started.